So high blood pressure, otherwise known as hypertension, right? This is a perpetual chronic vascular constriction, a narrowing of your vascular tissues. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. You have vascular constriction as a result of a blockage, right? Some form of atherosclerotic plaque buildup, right? That can cause a narrowing of the arteries, and that can cause a more higher elevated blood pressure. But that's not as common, okay? The most common one is the vascular constriction as a result of some type of inflammatory response or a deficiency in certain things in the body, right? Blood pressure increases or a narrowing of the arteries, a vascular constriction is not inherently a negative thing, right? Your body's supposed to do that. It's natural. Your vascular system, your blood vessels, they're like lungs, right? They expand and contract, right? The contraction leads to the expansion leads to the contraction, right? So you don't really just maintain just perpetual vasodilation just forever and always. That's not really how it works. That's not even particularly healthy. Just like in the same way you can't have vascular constriction perpetually and always. That's not really particularly healthy either. So there are certain things that you need a balance on. So basically, let's say you drink coffee, right? Coffee temporarily causes vascular constriction. You drink coffee, the caffeine hits your bloodstream, and it has an effect on your brain chemistry, causes temporary vascular constriction, which then causes an increase in nitric oxide release. So then you get vasodilation, right? So the caffeine triggers an adrenal response. So as your adrenal glands release adrenaline, right? That initial phase in the beginning causes that vascular constriction, the tightness, and then you get this increase in oxygen, right? Because your heart rate increases, and then you suck in more oxygen into your bloodstream, and then you get more vasodilation, right? This is often why caffeine is put in pre-workout supplements along with nitric oxide and the foundational compounds of nitric oxide, right? So you can say, well, caffeine causes vascular constriction. It does, but very, very temporarily, right? But the interesting thing about the vascular constriction is it's supposed to lead to an increase in nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, or NO for short, basically is released from the cells of your endothelial tissue of your vascular system, right? And as that nitric oxide increases, you get vasodilation and a softening of the arteries, and you get higher oxygen uptake and increased thermogenesis, right? There's a whole variety of things that factor into that, though. So we've got potassium, magnesium, we've got iron, we've got vitamin C, we got omega-3 essential fatty acids, right? We've got citrus or citric acid, we got malic acid, right? All these different things that work together, copper, and all of these things work together in order to maintain adequate nitric oxide levels, hemoglobin, ferritin, things like this. It's all blood related, right? And a lot of these things are included in like pre-workout supplements, which pre-workout supplements that people like bodybuilders were used before workouts and whatnot are kind of like a good example of a natural, not natural, but a kind of a blood pressure medication, right? The only reason why I wouldn't advise like a pre-workout supplement as a natural or an alternative to blood pressure medication is because of the stimulants that's included. It can be a little too intense, right? So you can shift your state from vascular constriction to vascular dilation way too quickly. So if you're already dealing with vascular constriction and then you drink coffee, the coffee increases the vascular constriction. That can lead to like heart palpitations, and it's just way too intense. And for some people, it can even cause a heart attack, right? So it's a little unsafe in that regard. So I would opt for something that's less of a stimulant, okay? And that's going to be food and herb based, right? Primarily. So touching on your medications a little bit, right? We have ACE inhibitors. We have ARB medications or ARB drugs. ARB stands for angiotensin receptor blockers, right? Specifically angiotensin 2, which is the active angiotensin hormone. You have angiotensin 1, it's inactive, right? It doesn't really act on you in a way that causes vascular constriction. Angiotensin 2 is converted from angiotensin 1, and that causes the vascular constriction, right? ACE inhibitors, basically ACE is angiotensin converting enzyme. Just call it ACE for short. So you have an ACE inhibitor. It inhibits the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, right? That's what that does. You may think, well, if you're taking an ACE inhibitor, why would you need an ARB, right? Because one inhibits the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, so you have lower angiotensin levels. And then you have the ARB medication that basically blocks the effects of the receptors, right? It blocks the receptors from being able to express the effects of angiotensin 2. Seems kind of redundant. It's not really redundant, but kind of. Then you have like diuretics that would come along with it, right? And people will take diuretics because of an overaccumulation of sodium and sodium reabsorption due to an increase in aldosterone secretion from your adrenal glands, right? So yeah, your adrenal glands, they freak out on you, right? Your kidneys basically send a message to your adrenal glands that says fire, right? So you get adrenaline, you get cortisol, you get aldosterone, you get these different hormones that cause like this seizure and this hyper response, right? And that could feel really brutal. So like, for example, hydrochlorothiazide, right? It's one of these common like water retention medications, right? Which is used in order to bring that down. And that would make sense for somebody who has has hyperaldosterone. But the thing is if you want to correct for the excessive sodium, the aldosterone release, the sodium reabsorption, the way you correct for that is just simply hydrating your body better, right? The water retention in the edema is often a result of dehydration. It's due to an imbalance. This is the reason why cutting sodium out of your diet doesn't really improve your blood pressure in any meaningful way. It's not really a solution. You can cut sodium out of your diet. You can cut salt out of your diet. You can't really cut sodium out of your diet altogether, but you can cut salt out of your diet altogether and it not really make much of a difference. Right. And the reason why is because the sodium is a problem because of the sodium to hydration level or sodium to potassium. Right. So the more salt you add to your diet, this can have a dehydrating effect only because as the sodium is found in excess in your bloodstream, the sodium will be sent to your cells. But as the sodium is sent to your cells, the sodium is bound to water, and that's also sent to your cells. So you get an increase of sodium uptake into your cells and water, right? So that can be like a bloating, edema, this type of thing, right? And all of that is facilitated through that increase in aldosterone. However, if you dilute this sodium saturation, you don't have that same effect. So ultimately, the issue is the balance, right? So for example, if you just add more potassium-rich foods into your diet in the form of like fruits, for example, well, then basically you relieve the hyperaldosterone effect and you can correct your blood pressure just by doing that, right? So, but blood pressure is a very multifaceted thing because your liver's implicated, your kidneys, your adrenal glands, your cardiovascular tissues, your heart rhythm, all this stuff is implicated. It's not just like one particular thing, but there's a rhythm that's established and everything is interconnected. So with my solution is basically to address each possible thing. So we have to address insulin sensitivity because when we increase insulin sensitivity, we drive down our average blood sugar. So we stay more in range with our blood sugar. And when you have lower blood sugar, or a healthy blood sugar level in between like that 80 and 110, that can help to correct your blood pressure. And the reason why is because as blood sugar increases, your blood pressure will also increase to circulate that blood sugar through your body faster to increase glucose uptake into your cells to remove the blood sugar out of your blood. Right? So your body will increase your blood pressure to do that. So if your blood sugar is always perpetually elevated, your blood pressure will also be perpetually elevated as a result of that. Inflammation of the kidneys. Let's say you're consuming too much protein, too much saturated fat, and it's putting you in a dehydrated state. That dehydrated state causes a release of more of that aldosterone that I said earlier. That puts a stressor on the kidneys and causes vascular constriction of the portal vein and has a cascading effect throughout your entire vascular system. All right? And then when you just keep eating like that all day, you're eating grilled foods, fried foods, high levels of saturated fat, your blood sugar's high, you're accumulating fat inside your liver, and you're doing that day in and day out, you get liver congestion, which stresses the kidneys, pushes your blood sugar up, and thus pushes your blood pressure up, and that gets maintained at a higher level. Right? So there's all these different things. One thing that helps more so than not is focusing on whatever improves blood oxygenation, because all of these things really tie back to resource distribution, right? Resource distribution and resource imbalances. In my experience, I've been helping people with this issue for years. Okay, this is the thing I have most of my experience with. Is blood flow issues, blood flow, blood sugar issues, energy issues, right? Metabolic issues in general. And to one degree or another, it's always a lack of blood oxygen and a lack of hydration, right? Most people with these issues are in a dehydrated state. And when you think about all the things that you're supposed to avoid when you have high blood pressure, all of these things are all dehydrating, right? Alcohol, cigarette smoking, fried foods, grilled foods, saturated fat, all of these things are dehydrating. All the things on the list that they tell you to avoid, right? Some people may say, well, if you should avoid sugar or you should avoid salt. And it's like, well, sugar in what form, right? So that's not really necessarily a dehydrating thing. It depends on the form. Or they'll say if you have high blood pressure, avoid processed foods. Processed foods are typically dehydrating foods, right? Processed foods are dry foods that are high in fat and low in fiber and water. So think about like crackers, cookies, cakes. These things barely have any water content whatsoever. So if you're eating a high volume of a food that has very low water content and it has a lot of starch and fat and then added sugar and starch, that has a dehydrating effect. And so your gut and your bloodstream gets oversaturated with the sugar and the salt, hence the aldosterone release, the reabsorption of the sodium, the edema, the high blood pressure, etc. So it all goes back to that. So if you focus on foods that are hydrating and increase nitric oxide levels, if you do those two things, that can correct for almost every other metabolic issue, right? So basically your diet should be primarily geared towards foods that are high in things like iron, copper, vitamin C, magnesium, potassium, omega-3 essential fatty acids, polyphenols, carotenoids, B vitamins, vitamin C, citrus, malic acid, things like this, right? All those kind of nutrients. It's a lot of things, but I'll go down the list and explain why. This drink is actually a really good drink for blood pressure as well. This drink is just water, lime juice, a drop of liquid stevia, 2 grams of taurine, and 9 grams of citrulline malate. Right? Citrulline malate basically is a combination of citrulline, an amino acid called citrulline, and an amino acid called malic acid. Right? So combined together at a 2-to-1 ratio, it's called citrulline malate. And citrulline malate is a precursor to increased nitric oxide synthesis and secretion. All right. So I can get into this, but I'm just going to start off with the food version first. So the thing that I would advise to start off with from the very beginning is waking up and having some type of herb or herbal tea. And the herb or herbal tea that you should have ideally should reduce stress, right? It should help to bring your cortisol level down in the morning and have a more even flow of energy. So basically bringing down cortisol and raising L-theanine. L-theanine is an amino acid. Is actually the movie Limitless, right? The guy takes a pill and he unlocks his brain, becomes like a super genius. He's got like this high-powered brain. That's based off of L-theanine, right? It's like a super enhanced version of L-theanine. But L-theanine essentially unlocks your brain, right? And the reason why is because it optimizes your brain chemistry and brings down stress. So it brings down stress, brings down blood sugar, and just optimizes your metabolism overall. So the herbs that I'm referring to that do that are primarily going to be things like green tea or matcha tea, which is a form of green tea, oolong tea or black tea or white tea, and then you have ginkgo biloba or ginseng, right? You can pick any of those and it works. For me, my personal favorites are matcha as a great morning tea for this particular thing. A second favorite would be oolong tea. Actually, no. The second favorite would be ginseng. And then the third would be oolong. Okay. But you can drink matcha or you can drink oolong tea, and then you can take like ginkgo biloba or ginseng in a capsule. You can do that before, like first thing in the morning before you eat anything, right? And that L-theanine and the antioxidants and whatnot in those herbs really help to significantly improve your metabolism overall. And this largely will help to correct for blood pressure and blood sugar almost immediately. It works very quickly. If you wanted more of a control for blood sugar, especially before you eat, because let's say you're pre-diabetic or just type 2 diabetic or even type 1 diabetic, berberine is a good one. So I would actually pair something like moringa tea and berberine, and those really address or adjust for cholesterol, so regulating HDL and LDL synthesis in the body. As well as regulating blood sugar and improving insulin sensitivity, right? So you can do matcha and berberine, or you can do moringa and berberine. You can pair those together if your issue stems from blood sugar as a result of like diabetes or like, some type of fatty liver or liver disease or kidney disease also. All right. And kidney disease and diabetes are also very closely related as well, because the thing that makes diabetes really problematic is the negative effects that it has on the kidneys. All right. So those are like the options for in the morning before you eat anything. As far as food is concerned, your foods, you would really want to prioritize something that you can eat in a large volume. Like you can eat like 2 or 3 pounds of it at a time, maybe even 4 pounds of it at a time. It's like 90% water, very fiber rich, very high in vitamin C, copper, and citrulline, as well as potassium. All right. Number one on my list is going to be watermelon. As long as we're in watermelon season and you have blood sugar, blood pressure issues, any type of metabolic issues, watermelon is definitely going to be at the top of the list. A close second is going to be cantaloupe, and a close third would be honeydew. Okay. Cantaloupe has a significant source of citrulline as well. Really all of your melons, whether it be rock melon, musk melon, cantaloupe, hammy melon, all those different types of melons, right? But watermelon is at the top of the list. And the reason is it has the highest water concentration. It has the highest citrulline concentration. Okay. So yeah, watermelon typically is going to be ideal, right? It's the most effective. It's not the only one that's effective, but in my experience, it's the most effective, right? So, starting off your morning with anywhere from 32 to 48 ounces of watermelon goes a really long way. in correcting your blood pressure. And then doing something like pairing that with like pumpkin seed kernels, sunflower seed kernels, or Brazil nuts. Okay. So you're getting some healthy polyunsaturated fats, fiber, selenium, omega-6, omega-3, as well as extra copper, iron, and things of that nature, right? Zinc. And zinc is the substrate for insulin production or insulin synthesis in the pancreas. So zinc is really, really important for people who have blood pressure or blood sugar issues or pancreatic issues where they're not producing enough insulin in their pancreas, right? Increasing zinc intake can really help with that. So that's citrulline from that watermelon. And it works really, really quickly. You'll even notice you'll feel amazing. If you wake up first thing in the morning, you have your tea, your herbs, and then you have that watermelon, it sets your brain up for success for the rest of the day. It's a really good way to start your day. When you're no longer in watermelon season, you would pivot to something like berberine. I mean, not berberine. I'm talking about beets. I'm mixing my words up and all type of stuff today. I don't know. Maybe I didn't sleep that well. Or I was shooken up because of my internet issues. So, beets. Beets are not like my main go-to, just because I feel like watermelon is just way better. So if watermelon is available for you, it's a way better option. But beets are a very powerful form of citrulline. People even put people will put beets in like a powder form and have it as like a pre-workout supplement. So you'll see like beet powders, right? And beet powders are known for being like a nitric oxide supplement, a natural food-based nitric oxide supplement because of the high concentration of citrulline in it. Beets are a significant source of copper and iron as well. So beets are a real blood builder. And beets are strong. So juicing beets is like my ideal. And I like to combine beets, apple, and carrots. I like juicing those together, right? And the reason why is because so the beets are good for the citrulline. The carrots are really good for the beta carotene, which is really important. The beta carotene is really important for maintaining the smooth muscle tissues or the smooth tissues of the cardiovascular system and your vascular tissues. And that's needed in order to maintain optimal elasticity. Okay, beta carotene is really important for softening and decalcifying your organ tissues. It's really important. Beta carotene. So carrots are a really, really good source of beta carotene, which is the substrate for vitamin A synthesis. All right. The apple, the reason, and I like doing Granny Smith apples. Granny Smith apples are more tart. So Granny Smith apples are like those little green apples, and they have a very high concentration of citric acid and malic acid. And citric acid and malic acid combined are really, really beneficial for just maintaining and improving the elasticity and smooth muscle tissue of your vital organs. Okay, so if you're dealing with something like atherosclerosis, you have a plaque buildup, you kind of need a bit of a buffer. So the citrulline is good because the citrulline is a precursor to increases in nitric oxide, right? So that's good. However, if you're going to increase nitric oxide, you also need to have something to leverage against the plaque formation. Okay. So nitric oxide facilitates not just vasodilation, but growth of new vascular tissues. All right. The growth of new vascular tissues, known as angiogenesis, is increased along with the increase in nitric oxide. Right? However, if you have atherosclerotic plaque buildup and you increase angiogenesis, that can make the atherosclerosis worse. Okay. So you have to repair underlying damage that causes the plaque formation in the first place, or the plaque accumulation in the first place. So you have to have a dual-sided strategy in that regard. So the beta carotene is really important for that. You don't want to, and also in order to really fully leverage the effects of nitric oxide, if you have like stiff arteries, right? You have stiff vascular tissues that can't dilate, you're just going to end up getting breakage. Okay? You don't want that, because then that will ramp up atherosclerosis. So you want the softening and the improvement of the elasticity at the same time. So the malic acid, the beta carotene, the vitamin C, and the citrulline, right? These things combined together are a really great juice. So if you're going to wake up and juice in the morning and you don't have access to watermelon, right? Because it's not watermelon season, or you can't get it where you are, then you can pivot to beets, carrots, and Granny Smith apple as an example, right? Or you can even do both. So you can drink that juice first thing in the morning, or you can do it like, let's say, before a workout, right? Or some other point in time in the day, right? Other foods to consider to really improve on these issues of vascular health and blood pressure. Grapefruit. And I kind of bring up grapefruit tongue in cheek because you have doctors that tell you, or, if you have high blood pressure and you're on blood pressure medications, don't eat grapefruit because the grapefruit neutralizes the effects of the medication. And it's like, well, grapefruit is natural blood pressure medication. Does the same exact thing, right? The only difference is grapefruit balances it out, right? So grapefruit is not specifically an ACE inhibitor, but it can have ACE inhibiting effects, right? It's not actively acting on angiotensin 1 and preventing the conversion to angiotensin 2. It's not really doing that. What it's doing is reducing the trigger to cause the increase in that conversion. So it's indirectly an ACE inhibitor, right? And you can even look this up, studies on this, right? If you look up like grapefruit ACE inhibitor, you type in those two keywords, right? And you do like a search on it, there'll be like articles pulled up about it and it'll explain it in more detail. So yeah, it's a softer version, but it's not like aggressive, right? And which is good because medications, they overcorrect. So you can take like a doctor will put you on 4 or 5 different blood pressure medications, and you can feel lightheaded, you can have headaches, fatigue, nausea, things like this. I've had people where they were like, I had to stop taking my blood pressure medication because I was almost crashing my car on the way home from work or to work. They'd be falling asleep behind the wheel, or like getting lightheaded and losing their vision behind the wheel. And I'm like, yeah, probably because the medications, they thinned your blood out too much, and they neutralize the angiotensin 2 conversion too much. So as a result, when you thin your blood and you inhibit the pathways that cause vascular constriction, when you do that simultaneously, if you overdo it, you drop your blood pressure too low. And that's where you get the lack of oxygen going to the blood, and that leads to the fatigue, the brain fog, the lightheadedness, and all that. And then you crash your car. Right? So the medication is kind of dangerous in this way. You don't really get that with food, because food is like an autoregulatory thing. You don't really overdo it like that, because food acts on these different hormonal pathways indirectly. Medication, you have to be very specific about the dose. And so one of the things typically that you don't want to do is you don't really want to take these medications, or you have a higher dosage of these medications because you've got bad blood pressure issues, and then you correct your diet. Because if you correct your diet, if I tell you to eat, if you eat the ways that I'm telling you to eat, where you have like a high raw fruitarian style diet, and you're still taking these blood pressure medications, the medications can drop your blood pressure too much. Right? And that's kind of dangerous. So you don't need both. The medications are more of a hedge against bad lifestyle habits that trigger the chronic elevated blood pressure. If you remove the trigger, you don't need the medications, right? Hypertension is not a thing that like is some anomaly that your body's not supposed to do. It's not what that is. So if your body's increasing your blood pressure and you're taking something that's inhibiting that, well, then you're inhibiting your body's defenses against other triggers, right? So it's a vulnerability at that point. It's very dangerous. So yeah, second meals would be more things like grapefruit and grapes. I'm a big fan of combining grapefruit and grapes together, right? Specifically, grapefruit and grapes together are a very good blood builder combined, right? So you can do like grapefruit, or you could do pomelo, or you can do tangelos, and then you can mix that with like green grapes and red grapes, black grapes, this kind of thing. Grapes are very rich in malic acid, very rich in vitamin C, resveratrol, vitamin K, B vitamins like thiamine, riboflavin. And then grapefruit is also a good source of beta carotene, potassium, vitamin C, malic acid, citric acid, right? That malic acid and that citric acid is what gives you that tartness, right? So when you taste like tart fruits, that's that malic acid and or citric acid in the food, right? You don't just get that tart taste though from citric acid. You also get it from malic acid, right? So you can have pineapple that's not a citrus fruit, but is high in malic acid, so you get more tartness from it, right? So yeah, grapefruit and grapes, very good combination, very good blood builder. Grapes are a significant source of vitamin K, specifically vitamin K1, which is really important for maintaining the consistency and accurate clotting mechanisms of your blood. So your blood doesn't become too thin and doesn't become too thick. It's good for regulating the consistency. Okay. Grapes are really, really rich in copper, which is needed for adequate iron absorption and usage, along with vitamin C. All right. Okay. You can also, for an additional effect, you can pair the grapefruit and the grapes with more bitter leafy greens. Okay. So some bitter leafy greens that are really effective are like your tender leafy greens that are like a deep green and a deep red. So like rhubarb is a really good one. Watercress, chard. These are really good ones. Arugula, right? They're bitter. People are like, I don't really like the taste, but the greens are more medicinal. And these greens are very, very rich sources of vitamin K. If you really want to overall improve your vascular health, okay, vitamin K is really important in your diet. Okay. So those leafy green vegetables are very rich in your B vitamins, your thiamine, your riboflavin, your pantothenic acid, your pyridoxine, all of these. Not so much in the B5 and B6, but good sources of vitamin B1, B2, and B3. And B3 is really important. B3 is niacin, right? Niacin is really important for blood flow and dilation of your blood capillaries. All right. And niacin is also very important for facilitating thermogenesis, optimal thermogenesis, right? Leveraging heat energy. You had a lot of old school bodybuilders back in the day would supplement with thiamine. I mean, not it was supplement with niacin, right? And do like crazy high dosages of niacin. Niacin is put in like every pre-workout supplement. It's really powerful stuff. So there's that. And then you can pair the leafy green vegetables, the grapes, the grapefruit, and you can throw in about 4 to 8 ounces of kiwis in there. Kiwis are a really, really good source of vitamin C and vitamin K, B vitamins, and a bit of vitamin E. And vitamin E is really important for hormonal balance, lung health and heart health, right? Vitamin E is really important for those things. And then you can add in a little bit of fats. So for example, you can add in like hemp seeds or chia seeds, right? Or like pumpkin seed kernels, something like this. And, you know, the fats and the omega-3s, for example, in the hemp seeds, I'm more partial to hemp seeds. You could also do chia seeds. And those are very rich sources of omega-3 essential fatty acids. And so that's good for the absorption and utilization of the vitamin K, the beta carotene conversion into vitamin A, and the absorption of vitamin E. All right. And those fat soluble vitamins are really, really important for building and protecting and maintaining your cardiovascular tissues, right? Your organ tissues in general is really important for that, right? So definitely leaning into those hemp seeds. And hemp seeds are a good source of protein for those of you who are like, oh, how do I get enough protein in a raw diet, right? You can get around like 10 grams of protein and 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds. All right. And then you've got things like for gut health. Gut health is really important too, because basically your blood pressure gets increased as a result of increased adrenaline and cortisol, right? As well as aldosterone, but mainly cortisol. Cortisol is a steroidal hormone that is released in order to defend against stress. So adrenaline and cortisol usually get released together, but they're supposed to come down. They have a pretty short half-life. But if your cortisol levels and your adrenal levels are sustained at a really elevated period of time throughout the day, chances are you'll also have elevated blood sugar. So when you have elevated adrenaline and elevated cortisol, and you're under really high stress situations, likely your blood sugar is really elevated also. So basically you can get a diagnosis of either being pre-diabetic or just full-blown type 2 diabetic. Not because you actually are necessarily, but because those stressors are just perpetually elevated, and stress raises your blood sugar, right? Because cortisol increases the conversion of fat and even protein into sugar, right? Mainly fat. So basically cortisol converts, you know, subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, and even fat stored inside your liver that gets converted into sugar at a faster rate. So cortisol, as your cortisol increases and is perpetually elevated, you get higher levels of lipolysis, which is fat metabolism, which people typically want, but your blood sugar ends up going higher. All these things work together as an appetite suppressant. So a lot of people with high blood pressure and chronic stress will often have a suppressed appetite. So your appetite will be suppressed all day long, and then you eat at night, right? You may even binge eat at night because it takes forever for your cortisol to go down, and it probably doesn't go down until really late at night, if that at all, right? So you could be super wired and then just end up binge eating at night, right? Because at some point your blood sugar has to drop at some point in the day, and when your blood sugar does drop, that's when you get the food cravings. So if you reduce stress with things like the fruits that I just mentioned, the watermelon, the grapes, the grapefruit, the kiwis, all these things, they have a calming effect. So some people will say, how come like after I eat like the fruits and whatnot, I feel tired? And it's like, well, it may not necessarily be the fruits making you tired, but it's having a calming effect. And when you experience that cortisol come down, your body relaxes and your adrenal glands calm down. So you may even experience more urinating, and you may feel more of a calming effect and you want to go take a nap, right? So you may have been this person where you've been very sleep deprived over a very, very long period of time, right? You're just perpetually sleep deprived because the cortisol and adrenaline, your adrenal glands are just kicking hardcore all the time, so you can't sleep. So then when you eat these foods that disrupt that hormonal pattern and bring those stress hormones down, then you're like, oh, I just want to go to sleep. It's because that fight or flight mode is shut off in your body and you can relax. So you go to sleep. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It would only be more of a problematic thing if your appetite or if your energy levels were low and you had brain fog throughout the day after eating fruit. That would be a different story. If it's very temporary, it's probably just because it's having a calming effect. right? Like even chamomile tea could do the same exact thing. That has nothing to do with the sugar in it, right? So it's not like a thing. Oh, the fruit is just raising your blood sugar too much. That's not really what's happening, right? Raising your blood sugar in and of itself does not necessarily make you want to take a nap, right? It doesn't make you want to go to sleep. Some people who are like type 2 diabetic or whatever, they find it very difficult to go to sleep. They don't sleep very well at all, right? So when it's not necessarily causal, right? It just may be a little correlated. So going back to gut health, right? This is where you would implement more of your fermented foods, right? Your coconut yogurt or your almond yogurt, cashew yogurt, your sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, things like this. And you can implement at least one, but probably even like 2 or 3 of these things in your diet in a day. And you can use your fermented foods either in your meals or as appetizers to your meals. Right. So I often talk about like coconut yogurt and making like a smoothie bowl or like an acai bowl or something like this. Right. So it's coconut yogurt and you put in a variety of berries and you can put cacao nibs and hemp seeds in there or chia seeds. You can load up the bowl and puree it in a blender and have a smoothie bowl. Right. You can add sliced fruits on top, like strawberries, other berries, kiwi slices, things like that in it. Right. And you can have like this fruit smoothie bowl. And when you add in things like your blueberries, your blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, these things are very rich in vitamin C, vitamin K, copper, iron, omega-3 essential fatty acids, B vitamins, right? Your B1, 2, and 3 in a bowl like that. And then you add in things like your hemp seeds or your chia seeds, flax seeds, things like this for additional fiber, additional B vitamins, and things like that. With the coconut yogurt, all of these things work to really improve your gut microbiome by adding in more beneficial gut bacteria into your gut along with prebiotic fiber, right? And then using a fermented food as like either in your meal or as an appetizer to a meal would be like if you were to have like a small cup of sauerkraut or kimchi before a meal, right? So like let's say you were going to eat rice and lentils with broccoli, right? Or you were to eat black beans and quinoa with kale, right? Something like this. But maybe like when you eat certain cooked foods like beans or any kind of legumes, you feel gassy and bloated, right? This is a gut health issue a lot of the time. And it's also a dehydration issue. So like a lot of the gas and bloating that you may feel, that water belly, you may feel that just because of a lack of hydration. And so when you drop foods on your gut that are high in starch, they're high in sodium, they're not very water-rich meals, your body has to pull fluid from other areas of your body and centralize it in your digestive tract. So this can cause like this gut edema. So you get this swelling in the abdomen. So if you have like, let's say sauerkraut, a cup of sauerkraut, like 6 or 8 ounces of it before you eat that meal, you get a different result. The trifecta is this though. There are certain herbs, also other herbs, aside from the ones that I mentioned earlier on, that help to not only improve digestion and reduce acid, gas, and bloating, but also improve blood pressure. And these are going to be herbs like, for example, ginger and turmeric. Okay. Also things like cayenne pepper. Okay. Even things like garlic, right? So garlic, thyme, basil, ginger, turmeric, these different types of seasonings and herbs and spices go a long way towards bringing down blood pressure. So let's say we take ginger and turmeric and cayenne pepper. We use these 3, right? So before you have that meal, you do let's say a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And then you put that in a mug, and then you fill that mug with like, let's say 8 ounces of hot water for tea. And then you stir everything in the mug, and then you drink that tea down. Then you have the fermented food. Then you have whatever meal that you may have with the quinoa or the rice or the beans or whatever that like that. I don't know if I would suggest the broccoli. Broccoli people with like gut health issues or who are predisposed to gas and bloating, they get real issues with broccoli. Broccoli is very cruciferous, and it's also very high in phosphorus, right? So that high level of phosphorus can cause a lot of gas and bloating, right? High levels of methionine, phosphorus, sulfur, right? This type of thing. It may be a little too much. And it's got that high sulfur concentration, right? So it may be a little too much. And you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the sulfur too. Like if you take broccoli, like let's say broccoli that's already been like cooked or something, you put it in a plastic container and you leave it on a counter in room temperature, you'll notice the lid will kind of bulge. If it's like a plastic container, the gas will build up inside the container from the broccoli. It's like when you take the lid off, that thing will, right, that thing will pop open. It'll be bulging with gas, right? Broccoli is a pretty gassy vegetable, right? So just beware. It can be very beneficial for your health, but if you got gas and bloating issues, you may want to think twice about the broccoli. The ginger turmeric thing, that can help a lot, but you know, it may not be enough at this current moment in time. So you can test it, and if it don't work, then you know, I got to wait a little bit before deploying that, right? Then let's say after the meal, you can even do another tea. So after the meal, you can do parsley tea, nettle tea, or tulsi tea. And that's really good for calming down your stomach and digestive system as well. It's also very good for blood pressure, liver health, kidney health, and that kind of thing. Okay. And those are some of the key things that'll really help to improve blood pressure. And that's kind of like more of a template for how you eat, right? So you have your tea, you have your melon, and then you have like your probiotic rich meal, like that coconut yogurt bowl. And then you can have like the fruit bowl with the grapes and the grapefruit and the kiwi and the greens and all of that. And you have another meal that's more of like a cooked meal where you do your side of your sauerkraut and your teas and things like that. And then you go to bed and you can have like chamomile tea before bed, burdock root tea. Burdock root is really good for bringing down your blood pressure as well. So is chamomile. So is tulsi tea, right? Also known as basil tea. Right, so you can do, those would be some good bedtime teas as well. There's a lot going on in the Tribe by Noir community. And I've been hard at work adding a lot of very valuable and important things that you need to know and learn from in order to be able to be successful on your journey. We're talking about shaving off months and even years off of the struggle to be able to reach peak health. Right? And that's what this is all about here. Now, when you become a member of the Tribe by Noir community, you get access to all of the courses and guides and member exclusive live streams and video playlists and community and group coaching calls, etc. Okay? Now, with the guides, there's a few very important key guides. The first one is the High Raw Vegan Nutrition Guide and Diet Plan, or Diet Plans. And this teaches you how to structure your calories, your macros, your meal structure, and it teaches you how to do that in alignment in order to achieve whatever your goals are, whether that be to gain weight, lose weight, reverse metabolic disorders, and autoimmune issues. Okay? And you also get recipes and things of that nature. And it's growing, so I'm adding to it periodically to make it better. Okay? In addition to that, we have the alternate day fasting guide, Train, Feast, Fast. If you are looking to drop body fat in a minimal amount of time and add on years to your life, improving longevity, then this is the route to definitely go. This works much more effectively as opposed to just doing a simple caloric deficit or an aggressive caloric deficit. Train, Feast, Fast is geared towards getting you to drop body fat in a record time while preserving lean mass and cutting time off of the journey, as well as saving you money on your grocery bill. We're talking about minimalization, taking all of the complicatedness out of it and making it more efficient. As far as training goes, we have Tribe Flex. Tribe Flex is all about train anywhere and train everywhere, okay? Where you have full fitness freedom. So you can train and reach your fitness goals without the need of a gym, without the need of dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, and all kinds of other expensive, heavy equipment and take up all kind of space and things like this. Okay, again, minimizing the process. cutting straight to the point, right? Making things as efficiently as possible. You don't have to spend 3 hours training a week, 5 hours training a week. A good 60 to 90 minutes a week is all you really need to be able to pack on quality muscle mass, improve strength and mobility. So you can go on and live your life and do other things rather than slavishly commuting back and forth to a gym wearing yourself out. And you can do it with just body weight and resistance bands. And then finally, we've got the video series for mindset and self-development, the 3 steps of self-actualization: discovery, assessment, and actualization. And that video series is geared towards teaching you and guiding you through that 3-step process so that you can get a better grip, a stronger hold, and a mastery over your personal psychology. And the reason why you really want to pay attention and take part in that is because that can shave years off the struggle, removing unnecessary mental and emotional blocks that you otherwise would have. All right? And then finally, in addition to that, you get access to the live stream replays, you get access to the growing video library of exclusive content, tutorials, and things of this nature, as well as the weekly group coaching calls that we have where the tribe comes together as a community, right on voice chat. We share our successes, our struggles, our experiences, crack jokes, live Q&A, tutorials, and all that fun stuff. So we have a good time in there. So you get access to all of this when you become a Tribe by Noir member. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side for just half off. It's not going to be like that forever. So if you're serious and you really want to take part, get started. And I'll see you on the other side.